from sunny Oxford. Welcome to the second webinar today. We'll be discussing the second part of the impacts and challenges of the coronavirus on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We have two distinguished scholars, experts in the field. Let me introduce you to them. Dr. Wendy Seeley from Chichester University in the UK. Hello, Wendy. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Professor Wickens, and good morning, everyone.
And please introduce yourself very briefly to our audience.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Professor Wickens. I'm Dr. Wendy Seeley, and I'm currently the Program Coordinator for the Event Management degree at the University of Chichester. I have worked in the field of academia for almost 11 years, but prior to that, I worked in the hospitality sector. I worked for Marriott Hotels and Resorts for about 13 years in the USA and in the Caribbean. I also worked for a 500-room resort called Ammon Beach Resorts based in Barbados. And I also have experience working in small boutique hotels as well. So I do have quite about 25 years experience, and I know all the things that go on behind the scenes in the hospitality sector.
Oh, thank you, Wendy, very much. Now, let me introduce you to our second keynote speaker, to Professor Dimitris Bouchalis from Bournemouth University in the UK.
Hi, Ginia, good morning.
Good morning, Dimitris. How are you this morning?
I'm very good. I'm trying to stay positive in these really difficult circumstances.
Yes, we all do. Dimitri, could I ask you to introduce briefly yourself to our audience this morning?
Yes, I've been working in tourism for about 35 years, starting from Greece in the tourism industry and then moving to the UK to study. I've been in Bournemouth for many years, leading a range of tourism and hospitality initiatives and research. And I've been working very closely with the United Nations World Tourism Organization in identifying strategies for both destinations and tourism and hospitality organizations.
Thank you very much, Dimitri. At the end of the presentations, we will do again the Q&A with our experts. If you would like to submit a question for our panelists, please use the Q&A button, which you will find on your screen. We will do our very best to answer as many questions as possible in the time provided. So, let us start. So over to you, Dr. Wendy Seeley. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. So my presentation today is on the impacts of COVID-19 on the hospitality industry, the USA, Caribbean cases, and lessons learned. So what I will be looking at today basically would be exploring the impact of COVID-19 on the tourism industry. I'll be examining the responses so far of hotels in the USA and the Caribbean to COVID-19 and the implications. And I will also be looking at the lessons learned about disaster preparedness from COVID-19 outbreak so far. So we will all agree that throughout the pages of history, diseases, plagues, epidemics, or pandemics have ravaged humanity, causing widespread ailments, illness, and deaths over time. Smallpox claimed about 5 to 10 million lives in the Roman Empire. The Japanese smallpox epidemic of 737 caused a death toll of about 2 million, and about 200 million people were wiped out in the 14th century in Europe by the bubonic plague.
Sorry, Wendy, to interrupt you. Do you have a PowerPoint presentation? Could you share it with us?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought it was.
Don't worry. So the audience can see exactly your beautiful presentation.
Okay, just let me just go back to that. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, we can. If you put it on the full screen now.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Wendy.
Okay, this is where we are. So I'll just get my notes back. Yeah, so far, 35 million people have died from HIV-related illnesses since 1981. And in 2003, the SARS outbreak caused havoc in Asia and Canada. So the coronavirus is by no means different. It's a major shock that has the potential to rock the tourism industry. But such shocks are nothing new to tourism. Tourism has faced hurricanes, cyclones, bushfires, earthquakes, terrorist attacks, and more recently, the global financial crisis. And the tourism industry has had, in response to develop strategies of risk mitigation and resilience over the years. But coronavirus is different in two critical ways. Unlike most natural disasters, its effect is global rather than local. And in contrast to the global financial crisis, the risk is not just about losing money, but losing lives. It's then reasonable to predict that the impact of coronavirus on the tourism industry is going to be devastatingly similar, but with a much higher magnitude to that in the case of SARS. During the SARS outbreak, international arrivals were reduced by up to 20% in some countries and regions. Now, according to some preliminary estimates from the World Tourism Organization, they are predicting an actual loss of about 30 to 40 billion in international tourism receipts from COVID-19. The global airline industry is expected to lose about 113 billion in sales. Asia and the Pacific region are expected to see about 9 to 12% declines in arrivals. Estimates for other regions are still currently uncertain as the situation evolves. And the impact of COVID-19 on the hotel sector so far is unprecedented, unlike anything that we've ever seen before. So while business disruptions from SARS saw hotels and resorts recover within 4 months, STR International, the hotel consultants, are actually predicting that the recovery from this pandemic will go well into 2021. And some colleagues and researchers are even saying that it might take up to 5 years for the world to recover, but we will see what happens. So far, cruise companies have reported losses of 750 million US dollars in revenue since January. And the shares of Royal Caribbean, Carnival, and Norwegian liners have dropped by 60 to 70%. Cruise companies are not eligible for the US 500 billion bailout because many of them are not registered as US businesses. Many of them take advantage of tax opportunities offered by other countries, and many of them therefore are registered as businesses in other countries. If we look at the hotel industry, this industry has been really hit hard. The hotel industry in the US alone supports 8.3 million jobs, and that's through direct and indirect employment. But about 4 million jobs are actually being lost in the hotel industry from direct employment. And many employees who are directly working in hotels are expected to lose their jobs within the next few weeks. And that may even extend into a longer period. Many employees have already been furloughed as well. We managed to get, for this ongoing research, some information coming out of the US and how that industry is being impacted. And we learned that the Marriott hotels and Resort are expecting to lose 75% of their revenue from this crisis. In the Marriott hotels, hotels and resorts are closed or are in the process of closing. The CEO of Marriott indicated that himself and the owner of Marriott Hotels and Resorts will not get a salary for the rest of 2020. The executive teams at the Marriott resorts are on half pay. Other employees are either furloughed, and new hiring at Marriott has been suspended. At the Intercontinental Group of Hotels, they've introduced a cancellation, a more flexible cancellation policy. So cancellation fees have been waived and a flexible loyalty program is in place. So what they're trying to do is to encourage customers to make bookings anyway for the future. Intercontinental, they've also canceled all dividend payments to shareholders. And at Best Western, their employees are on furlongs, hotels have closed, and their staff reductions. And they too also have a flexible cancellation policy in place in order to encourage rebookings. And they are currently changing their loyalty program requirements. But this is not the end of the problems for hotels in the United States. This is only the beginning, really, because the situation is a lot more complicated than it looks. It's not a simple case of just closing the hotel and reopening. It's expected that this industry will be plagued by staff shortages, staff illness. Employees might migrate to other industries where they perceive it to be a lot more stable. Low morale and mental health issues are something that is being anticipated by some of the industry experts. And the mental health issues have not really been addressed at all in the press, much in the media, or by governments. And the reopening of hotels may have to be on a face-by-face basis, which means that employees may not all go back to work immediately. We also looked at the Caribbean, and so far we've managed to get some information out of Barbados. We interviewed 4 hotels so far. The thing is about hotels in the Caribbean is that they consist mainly of small, medium enterprises. Actually, in Barbados itself, 90% of the hotel accommodation is small, medium enterprises. And these enterprises are less resilient to crises impacts because they have a lower level of preparedness and they rely more on government agencies. And although small, medium enterprises and their leaders and management are concerned mainly about hurricanes, because that's what we've got experience of in the Caribbean in terms of disasters, there's no precedent at all for infectious diseases or anything as we've seen so far with COVID-19. So often these organizations, they lack the necessary resources and knowledge to take appropriate action, particularly on these types of disasters. Spearman and Sharpley explained in their research at small, medium enterprises, they assume that emergency planning is someone else's responsibility. And they're often reactive rather than proactive to disasters. And having worked in the sector myself, I could vouch for that. And we only tend to put a disaster plan in place if the tour operators ask for one. And so that's unfortunate. One of the primary challenges for these hotels actually is financial, how they're going to manage their finances. So what we've learned so far on Barbados is that 100% of all accommodation facilities are currently closed. So the tourism industry is virtually shut down, restaurants, businesses closed, only vital services are currently available. Some hotels though, most hotels are taking bookings, but with very flexible cancellation policies in order to encourage people to make forward bookings. On check-in, some hotels anticipate that they would be reopened in May maybe from the 1st of May, but there's no guarantee that they will have guests. 99% of the tourism employees are laid off and are applying for unemployment benefits, and this is putting a strain on the social services. So while the government is trying to contain the virus, no re-entry or reopening strategy for tourism has been thought through, put into action, or even publicized. Now, some respondents informed us that the Caribbean Tourism Task Force, which is run by the Caribbean Hotel Tourism Association and the Global Tourism Reliance and Crisis Management Sector, they are coordinating a tourism industry readiness response for the Caribbean. But my understanding is this is more going to be a coordinating and sharing of information, a compilation of dissemination of support tools, training, and advancing best practices by companies and destinations. But because the situation is unprecedented, there's really no protocol for response. So efforts to date are still pending. From talking to hoteliers in Barbados, there are a number of issues that have come to mind. The thing is that 90% of the business coming into hotels in Barbados and from that far in the Caribbean come through tour operators. But the majority of tour operators, they get very, very good credit terms, 45 to 90 days credit. Many do not pay on time. But with a lot of tour operators also experiencing financial trouble, one of the main concerns that hoteliers have is that the likely result of all this is escalating tour operator accounts receivable debt. That will be very difficult to recoup due to the fact that tour operators as well are in the same situation. And it's very likely that many of them will also ask for some sort of leniency where their debt is concerned. Furthermore, the hotels are going to be at the mercy of the tour operators now for their recovery, which will also exacerbate the financial situation. So tour operators are likely to require substantial discounts from hotels in order to relaunch themselves back into the market and to prop up their own financial losses. Hotels in the Caribbean may also find themselves having to recover from the financial losses incurred from the lockdown, not only from the actual discounting that they will have to do, but there are other things that go on that exacerbate the problem, because a lot of the hotels in the Caribbean are actually all-inclusive hotels, which means that the tour operators would have collected money for food, beverage, sightseeing tours, as well as accommodation. So all of that money would be due to the Caribbean hotels. And then, of course, you've got the Thomas Cook bankruptcy also looming as well. Thomas Cook is reported to have left or gone bankrupt, actually, owing lots of hotels money. And 60%, sometimes 60% of a hotel's business would come from Thomas Cook. According to reports, Thomas Cook also owed all-inclusive resorts in Mexico, one particular all-inclusive resort, $2.5 million in money. We don't have any exact figures from Barbados, but I think what we can see here evolving is a $0 tourism economy. There are lots of lessons that we can learn from this crisis. I think one of the most important lessons is disaster planning should be an integral part of strategic management. Hotels need to consider the risks associated with all aspects of its business, particularly as it relates to external shocks. By using scenario-based planning, hotels need to determine how natural disasters, ecological, topographical, biological, affect all areas of their business and the ability of the business to cope. They need to consider how their operational and administrative policies and processes might contribute to its ability to deal with risk posed by other phenomenon, and how this might affect their business. Disasters will also cause staff shortages, business closures, loss of valuable lifeline support, including transportation, electricity, water, telephone, and communications. Now, the low probability of these things happening does not negate the fact that we must consider the high significant effects of these crises and deal with them. It's clear that hotels need to have and plan and prepare for varying lengths of reduced revenue flow by conserving cash and considering a line of credit for the short term. There's some studies that have been done in the US very recently that looked at businesses, small businesses that were affected by this crisis. And the study found that small, medium enterprises only had 1 month's worth of operating capital at their disposal. Hotels must evaluate their contracts with the distribution channels, suppliers, and all aspects of their supply chain to ensure that the terms and conditions do not put them at a disadvantage when disasters strike. Hotels must have a reserve cash flow set aside to cover salaries and fixed expenses in times of crises for at least 3 months. It's very important that hotels do not cut their marketing budgets. Hotels need to have a marketing budget, contingency budget. This special contingency budget must be put in place, be reviewed, and accrued from year to year if not spent. When the bad times hit again, money would be available to spend on new initiatives and focus the spending on existing customer base. Hotels also need to be very wary of large-scale discounting. Time and time again, having worked in marketing myself in the Caribbean, this does not work, and it does more harm than good. But not only that, then it compounds the financial problem because it takes years to recover from heavy discounting that we do engage in during an economic downturn. What is most effective is to add value to what you already have through diagonal integration, by developing packages and collaborating and working with other hotels, with other tourism suppliers in order to give value to the customers. Heavy discounting attracts the wrong mix of customers and does more harm than good to the hotel's image, which may result in the long-term loss of especially repeat customers. But having said that, hotels should also diversify their business rather than relying too heavily on one particular type of business or geographic segment or distribution channel. At the same time, more emphasis needs to be put on optimizing revenue from all revenue streams that can be earned at the destination. The problem with all-inclusive resorts is that where the traditional hotel would still earn cash, hard cash, at the destination from selling tours, from selling food, from selling beverages, that does not happen when you're highly dependent on an all-inclusive concept and where all the money is collected in a foreign country by tour operators and paid only 90 days after the customer departs. I just want to add a few extra comments to this. I think along with everything else that we have learned, I think airlines and hotels need to clean up their act. The health and safety of passengers and crew have never been more important. And we've already seen that major airlines are now using sophisticated methods and embracing technology to eliminate dangerous bacteria from their planes. No longer should passengers accept traveling on dirty airplanes. The cruise industry as well may face a lot more hurdles in the future. Governments may now have an increased interest in illness reporting and sanitation inspections, which means more regulations for these floating hotels. Hotels themselves need to pay even closer attention to cleanliness. High-touch services need extra attention to detail in cleaning should be observed as disinfecting doorknobs, elevator buttons, phones to lessen the spread of germs. Room attendants should be using a new pair of gloves and new rag cloths for every room that they clean. And this will reduce the spread of germs from one room to the next. So is COVID-19 a disaster or a blessing in disguise? Well, only time will tell. It depends on government and it depends on the industry. Clearly, political and financial commitments are key to ensuring that tourism can again lead the wider economic and social recovery as it has done in the past because of its nature of resilience and its ability to bounce back strongly. Overall, much will depend on how government handles the situation of a close encounter with nature. It could become an economic crisis of global dimensions and a threat to globalization and mankind, or it could be a moment when policymakers manage a common crisis response and even manage to rebuild some trust. For hotels, it could be a time for renovation, reflection, innovation, and invention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for your thoughtful presentation. Can I ask you to close your presentation now so we can see you? Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. Brilliant presentation. We have learned a lot, really, from your today's discussion. I'm sure there will be so many questions at the end of this keynote presentation. So we'll come back to the question and answer very shortly with you. And now let me introduce you again to Professor Dimitris Bouhalis, and he will do his presentation now. Thank you, Dimitris.
Thank you, Genia. Wendy has done such a brilliant job. I don't think I've got anything to add. And what's very interesting is that yesterday I spent about 2.5 hours talking to the Greek tourism industry, which is small island, seaside, seasonal, and we face exactly the same problems. One of the big problems of Barbados, in particular in the Caribbean, is that they are so US dependent, and saying that US has already reached 35,000 dead in the last few days, and it's expanding. It's a huge problem. We've got the similar situation in Greece with Italy and some of our key markets in the UK. So it's kind of so far apart but so close into the challenges that we face, and the Thomas Cook situation, the Brexit situation, and all those things. And it's very interesting to actually listen to you and explore those things, because it's exactly those things that they are affecting us as well. So I've opened my presentation, Eugenia, and I've got a lot of slides, but actually I've got a lot of pictures. So a lot of the things that Wendy has said, I'm just gonna illustrate them to just make people aware of what's happening in real time. And then I'll show you some of the things that are facing us and how, and probably try to find some solutions at the end. So this is a lovely Bournemouth. Please come and visit us sometime. Actually, Bournemouth is facing exactly the same issues because, let me see if I can progress this. No, I cannot, because I'm looking at, I'm not looking at the...
You can that's it. That's,
yeah, okay.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Okay. So this was Bournemouth this time last year. Yes, Bournemouth seaside, this summery, it's beautiful, sandy beach. Please come and visit. This is Bournemouth this year. And you can imagine the difference and what impact that is making. This is Bournemouth Airport, actually. We've never had so many aircraft in Bournemouth Airport ever before. The only problem is that they are parked there and they're not going anywhere. They're not bringing tourism. So it's business as unusual. The World Tourism Organization is talking about solidarity, commitment, and support. And for the first time, we're doing demarketing. You know, I've spent 35 years of my life saying to people, come to my destination, let's have some fun. And now we say to people, stay home, stay safe, travel tomorrow, don't go anywhere, please don't come. Even places like Cornwall and places like the Greek islands, people go to the port and say, tourists, go back, we don't want you. We don't want you because you're gonna bring, you're gonna spread some disease here. Emirates says, see you later, see you soon. They stop flying. And I think increasingly we find a lot of organizations who are going out and they were saying, government, we need help. Can you give us help, please? Because we cannot survive, we'll go bankrupt and all the rest of it. I heard today Booking.com is asking the Dutch government to subsidize their staff because they only have got 15% of the bookings that they had this time last year. Having said that, we should see what Booking.com had as a profit last year. I think it's a time for solidarity, and it's a matter of looking into how can we help each other and what actually tourism can do to community rather than community do to tourism. I came up early enough in the Greek tourism industry and actually internationally. I came on the 3rd of March because my mother was in hospital and we were looking into the impact of virus, especially for people who had specific problems, people who are suffering from cancer and they are having chemotherapy. And I was very aware very, very early of what was happening with the virus. So I came up and I said, before we start talking about money, we need to talk about humanity, solidarity, resilience, and leadership. And some of the first hashtag that came out is stay home or stay home today and travel tomorrow. And Greek came up with the till then stay safe or keep dreaming. All those things came out. And I think it's probably the first time that we see so evident the need for we rather than me. I think it's, and this is a global kind of thing that we kind of see coming out. So I came out with what do we need to do in terms of the response during the crisis. And the first thing was to look into who are the people who have got a need. So I described it as a war, but you don't see the bombs. The bombs are so small that you don't see them and you don't see who is the enemy. And actually the enemy quite often doesn't know that it's the enemy because they don't have any symptoms. So I said, we really need to start looking to us and codependents, staff and employees, collaborators, and look after safety and security, food and medical supplies, cleaning equipment and support for those people. And then when you look into our customers, we need to communicate, not advertise. I said, stop advertising, communicate, express empathy and sympathy, develop relations, facilitate cancellations and refunds. Look, I'm saying to people, facilitate refunds. We're trying everything to take the money from the customers and the tourists. And now we're saying to people, we'll give you money back. And reinvite and make them dream. And I think what the tourism industry has got in terms of community support is, first of all, give blood, save lives. That's my new mission of life after my mother's experience. But also the industry has got accommodation, has got beds, has got conventions, has got exhibition centers that they can be transformed to health facilities or support medical staff. It has got resources like rent a car. It has got food and beverage supplies and the ability to produce meals. It has got quite often medicine and medical equipment, cleaning equipment, and we can look after kids or partners or parents for those people who are on the first line and they are fighting the virus and they're fighting to save our people. So I said, the health professionals are in need on a whole range of things, and we need to support the communities, and particularly the elderly, the disabled, the poor, and the marginalized. And actually, what you see both in the US and the UK now, it's the ethnic minorities that are suffering more from the virus. And also people like homeless, drug addicts, communities in need that we need to really support. So I'll show you a lot of pictures because they can tell 1,000 words and I cannot say 1,000 words. So give blood, look who is in need and provide what you need. The lady in the corner needs a little bit more wine, but there's some systems like the green card that I'm okay, which people were turning around to a red card and said, I need help. And it was really about the community. I'm very proud of Robert. Robert is our demonstrator chef at Bournemouth University. And he volunteered straight away, and he went to the Pool Hospital in Bournemouth, and he's actually cooking for the patients and he's cooking for the staff. This is the level of resilience and this is the level of support that we need to have. I started with a friend called Kiros, something that's called 360 Tourism Solidarity on Facebook. And we showcase all the good companies and all the good people that they're doing great things. So the first one is Feed NHS, the National Health System of the UK, which has got so many different organizations that the restaurant chains and individuals who are cooking for people on the health service, and they're providing a good meal for them so they can be able to continue working for 12, 14 hours they do. And my hero is Captain Tom, and Captain Tom started trying to collect 1,000 pounds by doing 100 laps in his garden, and now he has reached 17 million pounds worth of donation. I did that last night, 15 million, and as of today, it's 17 million. I think he's a hero, and I think that's the level of solidarity we like to see. So this Feed NHS, that has got a lot of companies, and then you've got Hilton, who is working with Amex to provide accommodation for people in need. And there are a lot of community things. It doesn't necessarily need to be organized, but restaurants has opened their kitchens and the community came in to provide support to those needed. My hero is a restaurant I've never visited before. And I don't know, it's a vegetarian restaurant in Rhodes called Maruli. And Maruli is my hero because it's a very small restaurant that is run by an Italian lady who moved to Rhodes about 12 years ago. And every day she's putting out about 200 portions of food and says to people, help yourself, πάρε ό,τι θέλεις. And this is not a big hotel chain. It's not Hilton, it's not Marriott, it's not millions of pounds. It's a small restaurant that is seasonal, that operates in Rhodes. It's a vegetarian restaurant and it's looking into the season to actually survive. But this is the type of solidarity that they expressed. And then the next thing happened is that they got known in the local community. And then some other people said, hold on a second, if you're doing this, I'll come forward and I'll donate food for you to cook for these people. So there are a lot of people who are going to the restaurant and they are taking pasta and they're taking ingredients. So the restaurant can actually cook it for the people and deliver it to those who need. I was really moved by, on a totally different scale, I was really moved by Arn's message to the partners. And I think this is leadership beyond belief. And this is what you all need to listen to that and see how he's dealing with that. And then when I was doing a lot of these presentations around, I was talking to a lot of people, they are telling me, look, you're quite pessimistic and we have got a bad time dealing with all these things. We're looking for you for some optimism. And I was really struggling to find something that's really optimistic in this catastrophic kind of situation that we face. And I kind of thought really hard, and I thought, who do I respect immensely in terms of leadership? And one of the people that I've been following for a long time is Captain Sulu, Sulisberg, the guy who actually landed. In fact, he didn't land, he watered the plane on Hudson River in New York. And he managed to get 155 people to safety. And the reason for that is that all of a sudden we had exactly the same situation. We had no thrust on our engines. There is no movement happening. And all of a sudden we are having an industry that is finding an incredible crisis. And Captain Sully spent 210 seconds to actually get this plane down to safety. Yes, it lost the plane, but it saved 155 people. And I think it's really important. Actually, you can look at this video. I'm not going to play it because it takes 10 minutes, but it's absolutely incredible how you get an Airbus A320 into safety and how he did it. He did it with leadership. He did it with concentration. He did it without spending a lot of time talking to people, praying or thinking about the family, and everything's coming into that kind of video. He's talking about preparation, and I'm glad that when they talk about most of the tourism organizations, and especially the small businesses, do not have crisis management thing. It's a job of the government. Someone else is going to look after us, right? But if we learn from other industries, especially from airline, which is a very high risk industry, it's really about preparation, it's really about understanding, and it's actually working in real time to understand what are the conditions and take control and deliver. This is a very different situation from what we've seen in before. And that's Captain Sulu. And they asked him on the interview, when you got on the river, were you happy? And he said, no. He said, did you celebrate? No, I had a job to do. He was very happy the minute that everybody got off this plane into safety. And then I think he called his wife and said, I've done it. This is the level of leadership we need right now. It's kind of similar because we face a catastrophic failure and we need to brace, brace, brace. Leaders begin with a different question than others. It's replacing who can I play with how can I be responsible and what can I do for that? And increasingly we see that the only certainty is uncertainty. And crisis is predictable, but how we respond is not predictable. And if you fail to prepare to fail. It's something that a lot of my students have actually heard about it. But the good news is that we're all alive. Hopefully, none of the people who are watching, and I'm told there are about 250 to 300 people around the world who are watching right now, they're alive. That's why they're watching us. They're not in hospital. They haven't died. Sadly, 130,000 people, if I remember well, have died already. I guess this will double by the end of this. Having said that, this crisis is different to many of the other crises because normally when we've got a crisis in tourism, and those things that we've faced before, they last for a very short period of time. September 11 lasted for only about 3 or 4 hours, and then we went to recovery mode. Tsunami lasted for about 40 minutes, and then we went to recovery mode. This has been lasting so far for about 5 months. And most of the people that I talk to feel that it will last 12 to 18 months before we have a vaccine. But the difference is that our infrastructure is not getting destroyed because most of the other crises that we are dealing with, they've got major impacts on our infrastructure and superstructure. So that is significantly different. And what is also very interesting is that the reason why we're traveling is still there. People still want to travel. And people still want to go to Santorini and all the other nice places. And they cannot wait to finish that and get out of our prison and to go to the places where we like to go and do things. Having said that, a lot of people say, can we turn the clock back and go back to 2019, please, or 2018? But I think it's a little bit important to remember where we left it. Because it's really critical to understand that resilience is really about going to the next stage, but not necessarily going to where we left it. And I like to remind people where we left it. And quite often, people are looking at the mirror and they're looking back. But I really want to start making people look forward and to tell them that the past may be relevant to what we're doing. This is where we left it. This check-in processes. This is my North friends that are flying yellow planes, and I'm not going to tell their names, so I'm not going to advertise them. And this is the type of tourism that we have seen a lot around the world. Do we want that? I don't know. Then you've got borders like that with a lot of people waiting, Then you've got in the Caribbean, as a friend saying, buffet services like that, which are staying on the high temperatures for a while. And then you've got this kind of lovely environments, which I really love. And this is in different places around the world. Are we going to eat from these guys anymore? I don't know. This is my favorite place in Thailand. And this is my favorite place in China. Is this the kind of service we're going to have in the future? I have no idea. This is the normal 5-star hotels. So many people coming together. So many people working together under really difficult circumstances, either in the kitchens or on the back of the house. And those of us who work back of the house will know exactly what we mean. This is how service is designed. 1,000 people are touching these utensils and they're serving themselves. And they are going around the food, talking to other people, sneezing and coughing. And this is our way to bring our feasts. And this is in a normal environment. And this is how we eat all together. Very close, cramped environments. Are we going to go to that? And this is how we go to attractions. And this is how we are we're moving with groups. And this is how we're taking pictures of Mona Lisa in different places. This is how we got the beach. This is Bournemouth. This is Spain. This is Aliathon, one of my hotels. This is how we play. This is how we party, some of us. And it's crowded places that we're having fun. Not a lot of social distancing happening here, right? And then we had the climatic change, sustainability, and the Greta effect. And then we had places that they're concentrating a lot of tourism on the honeypots. And this is China, Dalian. And this is what swimming means for some people. And this is some of our realities in terms of sustainability, in terms of the sustainable goals, where extreme wealth is also face to face with extreme poverty. And this is some of the people, how they understand tourism. And we had a lot of residents coming back and say, tourists go home, turistas terroristas, all tourists are beep. Tourist, your luxury trip is my daily misery. And this is Barcelona, where 150 people only went out to complain, but there was a voice. And we also had destinations encouraging people to do balconing. For those of you who don't know what balconing is, please don't know what balconing is. It's not good for you. Don't do it at home. And this is the new realities. We need to disinfect everything. And we've got empty places that, as Wendy was saying, who is going to help these people survive? We've got a humanitarian problem coming forward with major things. This is before and after in different places, before and after, before and after. It has affected everybody. So the next day is quite difficult. I don't know what the next day is. I'm working with a lot of people around the world trying to help them in their context to see what's the next day. I'll tell you what, we'll be cleaning more. And we'll be cleaning and disinfecting much more. And we'll need to have manuals. And I've been spreading the manual from Hong Kong government that says how to disinfect hotels. It's 83 pages. But because they had to do with SARS in different places, they understand how to do it with much better a lot of other people. And I think we need to start looking into the new procedures. We may take temperature of people as they're coming in, or we may have to social distancing them. This hotel Icon in Hong Kong, that they've got several procedures. They install a thermal scanner on the hotel entrance, and everybody who is coming in, they are measuring them. They've got a range of different measures that they take already on the buffet, on the different areas, on how they are dealing with their staff and what they're doing. How are we going to cook in the future? This may be your kitchen, where people will be thinking a whole range of different processes, uniforms, protective equipment to secure the supply management, redesign the menus, redesign the kitchens, packaging, cashless, all kind of things. And we need to think about all the supply chain all the way back in terms of where food is coming from, how it's cleaned, how it's produced. These are very different conditions than what we have learned. This is what they do in China after SARS. They basically disinfect your service, and they produce that to you in this kind of plastic protection equipment, so they can tell you that it's safe. A lot of packaging you can see. I'm not sure if this is sustainable, but that's another issue altogether. We may end up with my friend from the Peninsula Hotel that everybody's wearing gloves and is producing things in a very, very different way. Or this is my friends in Hong Kong who are celebrating a birthday, but this kind of uniform may change and everybody may wear masks. And this from the Czech Republic, where people are distancing their tables in order to be able to help them. And this comes from Italy, where they're talking about new kind of ways of serving. And this is probably plexiglass on the beach. It's going to be boiling in the summertime, but it may be protective equipment, protective kind of space for people to enjoy safely. I'm not advocating, I'm saying we really need to think about it, because if you think that we're going to go back to what we're doing, I don't think it's going to happen for a while. And the next day will be much more complicated. In terms of the Sustainable Development Goals, I don't see any goal that is not supported by tourism. I really don't. And I think all of the Sustainable Development Goals are going to be suffering dramatically as a result of that. COVID has influenced all of those things one by one, and I don't have the time to explain it. But actually, the rough seas can make great captains. We really need to see who is going to survive in this situation. And we will not return to the past, but we'll depart to a new future. And the new future, we really need to look at it. I talked a little bit about resilience earlier and how we need to accept the new realities, that they are not as they were before. It may be better or worse, but they are new realities and we need to move there. And we are gradually sailing to the new normal. And we need to understand what the new normal is. I think we need to have an ecosystem approach. And for those of you, and this is a very complicated kind of strategic response that's looking into human strategies, money strategies, operating process, product proposition, distribution pricing, strategic competitiveness, and destination management. It's very complicated to explain, but and the thing is that every single organization, every single destination, we need to look collectively to all of those things to be able to understand what we're doing. And this, all the stakeholders who need to support us. We have got true uncertainty here. We don't have predicted scenarios. And because we've got true uncertainty, we really need to find new and innovative ways to get out of this mess that we are. And we don't have a time scale either. And that's really the most complicated thing. I know that I've spent quite a lot of time, but I really want to look into a few methodologies and to show that actually it's nothing new. It's really strategic management as we know it. The context and the conditions have changed, but we're going to a very different situation. And that's something I've done with Chris Cooper years and years and years ago, probably 25 to 30 years ago, which is really about the tourism system and how you're looking to the exogenous variables to look at how the tourism system operates and how we can maximize the equitable returns of resources for the resources utilized. It's a quite complicated kind of mechanism to look into what is coming as an input to destination and how we can create benefits for all the stakeholders based on this system. And it's basically looking at the 6As and redesigning the 6As based on what we've done and what we've learned from the coronavirus and how accessibility needs to operate. Because don't forget, we've got 3 regions here, right? We've got the destination region that we need to look after, and we need to make sure that it's safe for people to go. And also for the people who go, do not infect people who are at the destination. We've got the place of origin to make sure that where our customers are from, they need to be safe. And then we've got the transit region in the middle that also needs to be safe. And especially those of us who are coming from islands, we've got the problem that this particular thing is based on airplanes mostly. And airplanes are probably the worst infected right now. 36,000 employees have been put on furlough from British Airways. And yesterday on Cathay Pacific, only 1% of the people who were traveling last year were traveling yesterday. So it's really about looking into the interests and responsibilities of the different stakeholders. And this is nothing new, as I said. This is all strategic management methodologies that we just need to look at them again. I'm going a little bit faster, but we need, one of the key things is that a lot of the tourism industry is based on big volume and low margin and has been commoditized. Increasingly, we'll see because of the growth. There's a term that came up yesterday from IATA. The more distancing, we'll need to see more status area. So we'll see more space between places. We're not going to cover all the seats on the plane. We're not going to cover all the hotel rooms. We're not going to cover all the tables. So that will actually change dramatically the strategy and the economics of running the business. I'll finish with a few things about smartness and how smartness and real time can help us deal with the problems that we're facing. So you've got people, you've got technology, and you've got leadership in terms of smartness, and you bring that in a framework where economic actors, technological and social actors are coming together. Now, if I was to redesign this, I'll add health and medical actors because we cannot open a destination until our hospital is ready to deal with the pandemic that is actually dealing with us. So I would add to the smart system, medical and health actors. And then you've got a whole range of smart innovations that they're coming forward to actually support that. And then there's the element of nowness and real time, about understanding what's happening in the 3 different places, in the place of origin, at the destination, and at the transit. And understand the contextual conditions in real time so you can come back and provide a comprehensive response to the crisis in real time based on real time information and data. In tourism so far, we don't have real time. We've got contracts are happening a year in advance, marketing starting a year in advance. Very little operational things are happening in real time, and these are not necessarily strategic. We need to think about real time, and we need to start looking into how we're going to do that. We need to look in like internal and external context, and we need to see how we can co-create experience based on the new situations and based on the new internal context and external context. So people that they've got underlying conditions, people who are more sensitive than others, they need to understand how to operate on those things. And you can find all these things on the different publications. And technology will be really, really critical on how it will enable us to actually come together and help the co-creation of tourism right in the center. You have seen in China now, they've got this application with a green QR or the yellow one or the red one, which is based on your background, your proximity, where you've been, with whom you've been, how long you've been on quarantine, and things like that. There are a lot of technologies that will come in to help us. I like to finish with something positive. One day we'll fly again, I hope, and we'll fly high. Tourism is not elastic. People need to travel. There's not a question. It used to be some years ago, some people would travel, some people wouldn't travel. I think increasingly it's evident that people would travel. and we will travel again. It's a time of leadership to actually help the industry come back into shape and face the new realities and sail to the new situation. There are a lot of publications that I've done and research I've done that are informing this talk, and you can see that there. Thank you very much, and that's my contacts.
Well, thank you very much, Dimitri, for your excellent presentation. It has been indeed an inspiring contribution. I do share your perspective about the escape attempts people make. They want to travel, so there will be still demand when everything is gone back to kind of normality. But we also have to agree that we do live in a globalized world which is full of risks. And we don't really know how long this uncertainty will go on. So that is a huge problem, really. We can describe our current society as a risk society. We all taking risks. And I do like at the beginning of your presentation when you talk about people coming together. There is this community spirit now in the world. I'm sure it's not just here in the UK or in the European countries. In Asia and Nepal, people get together, yes, to help each other. Anyway, it's time for the question and answer now session. So let us then begin. We have here a number of questions. Let me look at them. Okay. Can I start with this one for both panelists? The question, what steps should be taken to instill confidence in the tourist post-COVID era? And that comes from Nadita Sapra. What steps should be taken to instill confidence in the tourist post-COVID era? Can I start with you, Wendy? Could you give us a brief response to this question?
Yes.
And then we'll come back to you, Dimitri.
Well, I think most of the concerns that people have right now is about health and safety, particularly as it relates to cleanliness. And I think this is something that businesses are going to have to pay close attention to, making sure that our hotels are clean, making sure that, our food is prepared in hygienic conditions, aircrafts need to be clean. And if you're on YouTube like me all the time, these are issues that are raised even before COVID-19 was an issue about dirty airplanes and dirt and filth. I've been on airplanes and had to sit down in seats that were filthy, visibly filthy, and you could see that the dirt has accumulated over time. So I think airlines need to address that. I think hotels also need to address their policies, train staff. Having worked in hotels, having stayed in many hotels, I remember going to a hotel and standing up at the door. The housekeeper didn't even see me. And she put the same sheets that the previous guest used back on my bed. I've seen these things, and these are real concerns. I usually travel with my own linens. So I think a lot of businesses in the sector are going to have to step up their communications program as well to let travelers know what they're doing to keep places clean. I've seen Etihad Airlines, they've got a documentary on YouTube already about what they're doing during the lockdown in terms of cleanliness, all the different sophisticated equipment that they're using to clean their planes and to refurbish their planes. And I think that's good. And I think that that's the direction that you would need to go, so that your place needs to be clean and sanitized, but you also need to let travelers know.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. That is quite interesting. Dimitri, would you like to reply to this question? Anything?
I'm just going to add to what Wendy said, and I'm going to take from the really last point that she made. It's not only about cleaning, which we take for granted, but it's also communicating how you're cleaning and making sure that people actually have a clear idea of what you are doing and put their mind at rest. It's really about communicating, and maybe a little video say, look, Jonathan, who is our cleaner, has got to do extra thing. And you can make it funny, you can make it personable, you can make it in a way, what do you do at home? This is what we do as well. We are in all of this together, and create rapport basically, and say, look, we understand what you are concerned. We have addressed it, so there's no problem. It's neutralizing concern effectively.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have got here a question from, what do you think will happen with the aviation jobs, given that so many are losing their jobs now and airlines are reducing their fleet? So that would be for both of you. So can I start with you, Dimitri? What will happen to the aviation jobs?
I think different places will find different ways of dealing with that, and also depends on the health of the airline, particular airline already. So I just read some news that EasyJet has sufficient funds to go for 6 to 9 months based on their financial situation, and a few days before. The Trump administration gave $25 billion to American companies to keep flying, or not to keep flying, but keeping the people in place. And there's a lot of issues that has got to do with the unions in the airline industry in the US. And that explains the state of the US airlines in general. I think the situation is not sustainable. And especially for airlines that they were not financially healthy, like Flybe was probably the first airline that actually went bust, not because of coronavirus. It had problems before, but coronavirus just pushed it a little bit over the edge, and we lost the Flybe.
Okay, can I come back to you, Wendy? Could you give us your response as well?
Yes, I do agree with Demetrius. The thing is with the airline industry is that it's full of competitive rivalry. It's a saturated industry. And I think we will see what we saw maybe with 9/11, where the fittest will survive. I think, though, that tourism will rebound as well as travel, and that the airlines will fly again. I believe, though, that marketing is going to be central to it. They might need some sort of financial support from government or funding agencies, but I'm quite optimistic about it because people love to travel, especially over here in the UK and Europe. We love to fly, and people, like to explore different cultures and different environments. So I think that it will come back. It's too early, though, to tell how that would happen and how soon.
Yeah. Okay, we've got here a question on education. So, now I will invite both of you to reply to this question. How the tourism and hospitality education will be affected due to COVID-19? Can we start with you, Wendy?
Well, I think that COVID-19 definitely will bring some changes to the curriculum. I think that health, safety, and risk management has to be an integral part of every business degree, or any degree for that matter. I believe that workplaces are going to change. I was reading a mandate by I think it's the World Health Organization yesterday, and they were saying that before restrictions could be lifted, that employers need to put measures in place to safeguard employees as they come back into the workplace and to make sure that they're safe. So I think we will see a lot of changes at the academic and pedagogic level of education regarding health, safety, management, business risk, but also from an operational level, we're going to have to make sure that when the universities and the schools open again, that we will have safer, much safer environments so that disease don't spread, and not just COVID-19, but other airborne diseases, the flu, colds, and things like that. So I think overall we will see tighter management on health and safety.
Yeah. Okay, Dimitrios, the question to you. How the tourism,
This is
hospitality, education will change, or perhaps we're moving now towards a virtual universities, virtual education, and we can have the robots teaching us.
This is a really complex question, and it's really it's going to take quite a lot of time to understand what's going to happen. But I think, first of all, I think we really need to look into time phases. We really need to look into now and during the crisis, the immediate environment after, and then a little bit in the future. I think the now situation is that most of the schools are closed and a lot of universities have closed, and we have all moved to digital and virtual delivery. Who have said 6 months ago that you'll develop a whole university delivering everything virtually?
Yeah.
Would have never, ever said that. So what's happening is that coronavirus is speeding the digitization of education in general.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's going to happen is that in the future we'll probably see much more blended delivery on campus and off campus, and we'll see much more multi, how do you say that? Education that delivered by a lot of actors. So everything I've been doing in the last few weeks is going immediately into my YouTube, and I know colleagues and in universities around the world, they are showing these YouTubes to their students because they would have never had access to me. They would have had to wait for me to fly to Indonesia or China or Barbados or Brazil to actually have an analog physical lecture in front of 300 people, 500 people, whatever it is. Now what's happening is that content is being developed and people are learning to use content in a much more clever way. On the 21st of April, I've got a similar kind of presentation on Smartness with the United Nations World Tourism Organization and all the affiliate members that they are members of the Educational Council. And they're inviting all their students to come and listen to that. So one thing is the format. And one thing is that on the short term, we've gone virtual, and that will influence the long term. I think the second issue is now we realize that the magnitude of the challenge, we should look into what actually we are teaching our students and the content of what we're teaching. Because a lot of stuff that we're teaching is probably out of date and needs updating. And a lot of the new skills that we realize that we need. So crisis management, I guess, will be top of the agenda very, very quickly. I'm not sure how many curriculum include the module on crisis management, and how many curriculums are having technology and crisis management as underlying everything we do. So I think there's a structural and strategic change that's going to affect everything that we do, and I think we'll be seeing a lot of those things in the future.
Okay, thank you. I have got here a question from Carlos Costa for you, Dimitrios. He says, "Hi, Dimitrios. I would like to see your viewpoints about the way technology can help tourism to reignite."
Thank you, Carlos. I think it's this idea of smart and real time that I didn't really have the time to explain right at the end. It's all about, first of all, technology is coming forward in terms of facilitating understanding who can actually travel and not. So vaccines or diagnostic kind of tests to see if someone is able to travel or not, and how this person can affect other people. But I think technology will enable the industry to become much more resilient and fast in responding to things and understanding real-time context. So for several weeks, people were trying to travel from one place to another, but borders were closing or had lockdowns in different countries, and the conditions were changing very, very fast. And airlines and hotel chains and hotel operators around the world, they couldn't catch up fast enough with the change of the medical situation. And we're doing some research. I've got Alicia, who is a student from Jamaica, who is doing a PhD with me on real-time resilience. And it's really about how you bring all the smart ecosystem to work together, and especially in a period of crisis, to understand who can you help and how to actually optimize the relationship and optimize what is happening in real time based on the conditions as they move. Now, we've got a very dynamic situation right now where you see different countries are going up on their curves and countries going down. And that will enable us to understand which markets can we attract. For example, Greece luckily has been quite good as far as the curve is concerned, because we are not, the Greek population has locked down early and has followed the instructions. And I think we need to look into which markets are available to actually go to this market. If we had the US as a main market, it will be a major problem for the Greek islands. So it's really about getting the matching in real time, understanding the context in real time, and that is, I think, what technology will drive a lot of the resilience that's coming forward, and also coordinating all the resources. Because if you need a lot of medical staff to be in New York right now, somehow you need to use the tourism and hospitality resources to transfer them from other places, to accommodate them. You really need a real clever and real-time intelligence in the ecosystem to actually manage those things.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I've got a question here for both of you, and this comes from Kartika Angraeni. To both speakers, could you please share some ideas or some suggestions for SMEs in tourism sector about what they can do to survive this pandemic? So talking about the small and medium-sized enterprises. Any concrete ideas that they can try, or based on your experiences working with global tourism sector? Thank you very much. So that's quite an important question, I think, because lots of the businesses are very small and medium sized. Yeah. And we spoke a lot about the global, the big businesses, the big corporations. So if we can start talking now about the small ones, can I start with you, Wendy?
Yes, absolutely. Well, small, medium enterprises will have a challenging time in rebounding, but they can. I think the most important thing to consider would be co-opetition, collaboration, and cooperation. These three need to exist across the board. I think by saying that, I think businesses need to come together and share their ideas and resources. Now, there are a number of things that they can do together. Pooling resources in terms of financial resources for marketing. This is a time where co-opetition is so important. Businesses need to collaborate with their competitors. No longer can they see each other's competitors and keep things secret and do things behind each other's backs when negotiating with distribution channels. They need to come together and come to a common agreement regarding how they're going to put themselves back into the market, common discounts for the tour operators, but also the pooling of the resources in order to get back into the market. If they do that, then the financial strain on each enterprise would be a lot less, because they'll be putting all of their resources and pooling and dividing their resources and the costs of any sort of e-technology or brochures or trips abroad to promote the actual hotels. They need to come together as well and share their expertise. So managers need to find whatever talent they've got, come together at the table and brainstorm ideas rather than keep them secret, and then implement the best ideas that would help all of the hotels and the destination to recover. I think companies can also share certain types of resources. Instead of having, let's say, one reservation center for each hotel, why not have one reservation center that takes bookings for all of the hotels who are collaborating together. Now, those are just some examples of things that they can do. But I also think that in terms of training, I think the new world that we're going to be living in is going to require people to be trained and retrained in a lot of areas. And that too is a resource that is needed, but that could be shared. The cost of this retraining can be shared. They need to work with higher education institutions and hospitality institutions to help them with that training. And the training must be forward training, not necessarily training on things that they already know, but training should be part of the whole risk management strategy. I think too often there's this distrust between the industry and academia. And I think that that has to be nullified right now. There can no longer be that distrust between the two. I think the two need to come together, and the education institutions need to allow their research skills to benefit these small businesses and to do research. Basic research is fine, but applied research would be very, very helpful in order to help these institutions bring their business back to where it was before. So this is just a few of the things that I think that they can do. And these are things I've seen work. Collaboration and cooperation really is probably the best way moving forward.
Yeah. And Dimitrios, to you now, uh, would you like to add anything else?
I agree exactly with what Wendy said. I think it's a misconception that small businesses, small and medium businesses are more threatened by crisis. In fact, all the research shows that small businesses are much more resilient than larger organizations. And the reason for that is that because they are really rooted in their local communities and they learn how to stick together much faster. And there's a lot of unpaid work that's happening in small businesses. Family sticks together and they're doing things and they don't necessarily be paid by the mama or the papa or the uncle who is actually running the hotel, but and someone can do a shift for a couple of hours, unpaid or somehow part of the family kind of situation, which a Marriott cannot do, American Airlines cannot do. So small businesses are much more resilient. They are pulling better help from other organizations because they know that they'll be there the next day. And Maruli in Rhodes, the small restaurant, is my hero, and they're doing that, and they're actually spending significant amount of money themselves back to the community. What tourism can do for the community, and they know that the community is going to help them to survive. I promise you, Maruli will be the first restaurant I'll go to when I go to Rhodes. I'm not a vegetarian, but I'll be for them for a day. Because it's the community spirit that the small businesses are much more rooted to, and they can differentiate. I mean, I'm traveling 250 days a year. You go to any hotel, 5-star hotel, Marriott, Intercontinental, Hilton, you have no idea where you are. You go quite often to a small hotel and you have got the Caribbean lady who is opening the heart and the family and the local resources, and you know exactly what's happening because you know exactly where it is. You go to Austria and you find, a local hotel that's all Austrian, they serve Austrian food, you've got all kinds of things. So I think this is the strength of the small businesses.
So you're saying really, perhaps tourists they will still be looking for the authentic and friendly experiences when they visit a destination.
Absolutely. And the other thing is that, on the short term, when we open up, it's much more difficult to open a big hotel. I've operated in hotels with 1,500 beds. It's much more difficult to open a hotel at this scale with full staffing, full restaurants and all the rest of it, rather than open a family hotel with 20, 30 rooms somewhere. Because it's the scale is different and the resources required are different. So small businesses are much more resilient and reliant on local communities, and that's why they're much stronger actually on big crises.
So our message here is small is beautiful.
I'm not going to go as far as that. It may be. I think you really need to have a strategy that's supporting what you do. So if small is your thing, and you support a good business strategy for small, it's great. If big is your thing, and you have got a big strategy for big is fine as well. It's horses for courses really, and understanding how you coordinate a whole strategy to deal with the issues that you're trying to do.
Okay, I've got one more question for you from Vicky Smith, and it is for you. How do you think COVID-19 will affect investors in tourism? Would there be a lack of investment until greater recovery, so ROI is more certain, or do you think there will be greater shift to investment in sustainability, finally accepting of longer term returns? So that's about investment. And this is for you.
Thank you, Vicky. That's an easy question to answer, really. Look, and actually these are 3 or 4 hidden questions in there and a little bit of a political statement. Let's unpack this. So COVID-19 will have a major impact on investment, and especially for the people who would like to do a quick return. We see that for the time being, the tourism, travel, hospitality, transportation companies are facing more problems, and therefore there will be no investors coming forward that they need quick return on investment. Having said that, there'll be a lot of companies that they'll be under incredible financial pressure, and therefore there'll be properties or resources on the market for those who are cash rich, and they can put money into an investment, because currently the yields longer term will be really high. So I think anybody is predicting that probably within 18 months we'll be back to normal, whatever the new normal is. And therefore, whoever is cash rich right now, and we know especially some countries and some organizations who are cash rich, they'll come in and buy assets that they'll be desperate to be disposed. So that is the investment question. The sustainability question, it's a totally different question. And I think it's almost a political question. But yeah. I think as far as return on investment, long term, for the next 3 years, I don't think we'll have good return on investment. But I think overall, tourism, hospitality, transport, and all of this ecosystem has actually good returns on investment, and there'll be some bargains out there.
Okay, I've got a question here for both of you, and this comes from Maria Nicolidaki. Question: the last decade, we were trying to handle the over-tourism problem and the saturation of mainstream destinations. We could take this crisis as a gift and weapon to regenerate tourism on a new basis, respecting destinations, local communities, and tourists at the same time. Okay? To you.
Can I take this? Can I take this?
Maria, sorry.
Because those of you who have been following me know that there are few things that can make me angry, and one of this is this word over-tourism. There's not such a thing as over-tourism. It's an invention of journalists that some colleagues have fallen into that trap, and it's really the wrong way of expressing overcrowding. Now, over-tourism is really about bad planning and bad management, bad pricing, but it's not an issue as over-tourism itself. So it's a matter of planning, management, and pricing, and marketing destinations. It's a very long discussion that we can have for a long time. Having said that, and there's actually on Tourism Review that I'm editing, Jeff Wall has done an excellent article on this. And anybody who who is looking into this bad word, I think they should look into the article that Jeff Wall has written, because it's absolutely incredible how we have got tools like carrying capacity that we've had for a long time, and a lot of work has been done, a serious research has been done, but the journalists have gone with this particular term. Having said that, I think the crisis will reduce overcrowding in certain places. It will bring more planning permissions. It will be more regulation from government. I showed you some of the pictures that I showed you earlier. I don't think that they may not be acceptable by consumers, and they may not be acceptable by public authorities. And we may find restrictions into places. We may find restrictions on how many people can go to the beach, and how many people can go to cultural attractions, and how many people can go to different places. Having said that, when you start having restrictions and you reduce the amount of people who would like to go somewhere, it's very likely that you're going to use pricing as a way of deterring people to go to places. So if you were to go to Venice, until recently it was totally free, you can imagine that you'll have an entry fee of about 50 euros per day or 100 euros per day to go to Venice. So there'll be a whole range of different policies and strategies to come forward to actually manage demand and supply, and special distribution of tourism and seasonal distribution of tourism, so we have got less overcrowding.
Thank you. What about you, Wendy? Would you like to add anything on this issue of over-tourism, although we're going to discuss it next week at length? Do you have any particular views yourself?
I agree with Demetrius that over-tourism is not something that is real. It's not a real concept. All over-tourism is just bad tourism planning. If you've got more tourists in an area than you can actually manage, then you have not planned your tourism properly in terms of infrastructure and the capacity of the destination to cope with tourists. It probably means that your marketing strategy is really very, very poor. And when you find yourself at the stage where you're having too much tourists, you can demarket. So there's steps that you can take. So when I see a place complaining about over-tourism, I say to myself, well, what is it that the tourism marketers are doing? Why did they not see this before and start to demarket? Because demarketing is all really about discouraging people from coming, or taking your marketing budget and putting it into a different segment and changing the mix of tourists or the type of tourists that you get at the destination. So I don't know where this term came from. I have colleagues who actually would tell me they're experts in over-tourism research. So kudos to them, but it's really just a concept that is a manifestation of bad planning and poor marketing, really.
Okay. And how about
it came, let me say something. It came from an article in Skift some time ago. It's a journalistic concept. Mm-hmm. It's for people who don't understand car capacity, and they don't understand geo movement, seasonality. And what really gets me upset with those people who are talking about that is that they go to a destination, they take a picture at one particular moment, which has got a geolocation and time, it's time tag and geo tagged. So if you go to Venice at 11:30 on a sunny day in Piazza San Marco,
yeah,
it's inevitable, and you don't have any restrictions, you don't have any planning, and you don't have any pricing process in place, it's inevitable that there will be overcrowding. Now, Zattere, on the other side of in Venice, where Nico has got the best ice cream ever, is absolutely empty. There's no single tourist there other than me enjoying gelato from Nico. And that's my big problem with this term. It doesn't understand the geography. It doesn't understand the seasonality. It doesn't understand timing. Now, when I finish my ice cream and I go to Piazza San Marco at 7 o'clock in the evening, it is lovely, and most of the tourists have gone away for dinner. So you really need to understand movement in real time and context in real time to understand what is the situation at the destination. And you need to go all the way back from that to planning, management, marketing, to take strategic decisions on how you are managing your destination. Now, many people don't understand basic principles in tourism, but they've got an opinion and they haven't studied enough on this to understand how flows and flow management needs to be managed. And they've got an opinion that quite often they say, look, I don't want to see a picture like this. But they don't have a solution either. So I think it's much more complicated, and that's why I'm really upset when I hear about this thing. It's much more complicated and requires, strategic management, marketing, planning, all of those things coming together to understand geolocation and seasonality per square meter, per 5 minutes, to be able to develop the right kind of strategies. And that's why context-based management, real-time management is really, really important on these things. Yeah. Sorry, you just hit me on a nerve, Maria.
No, it's quite an important issue you're discussing, because I think tourists also need to be informed, yes, and perhaps they can go off the beaten track to get the ice cream or have lunch or whatever. Anyway, thank you very much.
Please don't go to where I have ice cream. Nico is lovely, and he'll increase the price if a lot of people go there.
Okay.
I never said Nico in Zater.
I've just got one more question here for Wendy. Please, do you think the 5-star hotels will be the most disadvantaged? Why? And this comes from Danielle Pimentel.
No, I don't think they would be disadvantaged. Really high quality 5-star hotels actually might be at an advantage to recover from COVID-19. And I say this because by virtue of the rates that a 5-star hotel would charge, they tend to have much higher standards in terms of service delivery and very, very high standards in terms of cleanliness, because that's what their customer requires. Their customers will not tolerate a dirty hotel. So they have to do it. So they already have that culture of cleanliness in place. 5-star hotels as well have the resources to hire in skilled practitioners in marketing and in communications and in public relations. And that's sort of different from other types of properties, maybe a 3-star or small, medium-sized enterprise who may not have the capacity, the financial capacity to hire expertise. But you tend to find it more in 5-star hotels. So I'm sure the majority of 5-star hotels with experts on staff or expert agencies that they may hire in the metropole countries where they get most of their tourists from, they would already be planning what they're going to do in terms of marketing, remarketing, what markets are likely to come back to the destination. So they've already got those plans in place and would be meeting even as we speak and coming up with a strategy. Whereas different other hotels, maybe the 2 stars or the 3 stars hotels, are probably waiting on government and the tourism authorities. But this really depends on the jurisdiction and it depends on the hotel, because there are many, many beautiful 5-star hotels as well that are very small. And although they charge very high rates, they might be in the same position as a small, medium enterprise where they do have to depend on the destination officials and may not have the financial clout. But if you're talking about a 5-star, Ritz-Carlton, Marriott, Sheraton, surely from my experience, they've got the expertise that they need in order to initiate a comeback. So I don't think from that perspective that they would be at a disadvantage necessarily. I do know of cases in certain crises where in the Caribbean 5-star hotels were empty, whereas the 3 and the 4-star hotels had people in them. And I think what happened in that case is that the 5-star hotels, they have a lot of repeat customers and they don't necessarily depend on the distribution channels necessarily, because their customer is very upmarket and would tend to book direct. Whereas the tour operators were actually filling the 3-star hotels. After this crisis, I remember it was many years ago when the Reagan administration bombed Grenada and there was war in the Caribbean, and many of the hotels just did not have any people. But actually the first hotels to recover were not the luxury hotels. It was actually the small 3-star hotels and 4-star hotels. They recovered quite quickly because they had the support of the tour operators, and the tour operators were ready to book people into those hotels.
Thank you, Wendy. I've just got one more question here for Dimitrios. And this is from Valentina Longhi. What do you think about the consideration of the present crisis as the turning point for those destinations that have not embraced the principle of sustainability? Where would you suggest to start in an already developed destination? And this is to Professor Dimitrios.
It's a complicated question.
It
There are
is.
a lot of people. There are a lot of people who are thinking, who are advocating sustainability and degrowth and a lot of those things, and they see the coronavirus crisis as a medium to actually take that political agenda and the ethics behind sustainability forward. And there is, to a certain extent, there is a point to that, but it's primarily because of the principle of distancing. So because of the principle of reducing the capacity of destinations, reducing the capacity of the planes, and reducing the capacity of the beach, or imagine that you've got a cultural attraction that restricts how many people can go there. I can give you the example of the pyramids in Egypt, where in the Cheops pyramid, I think you can go inside the pyramid 3 times a day, and there are 150 people allowed each time. And the reason why they do that is to increase the sustainability of the pyramid, because so many people going there and breathing can actually create damage. There are very few places around the world that they've restrained the amount of people who are going to a place and what they do. So this become a political thing. So on the one side, it will bring more sustainability by actually restricting the number of people who are going to a place in order for the health mechanism and the health structure to be able to cope with the potential implications of what's happening, especially on the long term. So that is the one side of the argument. The other side of the argument is that a lot of destinations around the world, and especially those who are dealing with summer, they may lose summer 2020 altogether. So if you lose 2020 altogether, that means that you'll have to wait for 18 months until you start having income coming through. And hopefully, if you've got the vaccine, then you'll be able to attract people again. If you don't have the vaccine, I don't know what's going to happen. And having said that, what's happening next is that as soon as the markets open, there'll be floods of people who like to go back traveling, who haven't traveled, who have deferred traveling for about 18 months. And there'll be lots of different organizations who will be desperate to welcome them and desperate to welcome their dollar. And I think that will go against sustainability. So in this sense, we find that the crisis will distort the sustainability message, because on the one side it will enforce it, on the other side it may actually go against it. So it's quite complicated what's going to happen. I think what we see is that the crisis will force more planning, strategic management, strategic planning, strategic marketing. And within that, the sustainability agenda needs to come through the strategic planning and management. And we need to redefine the product. We need to redefine what we do. We need to redefine what value we do. There are a lot of issues about tourism happening in a place, but actually the money is happening at the place of origin, and staying at the place of origin does not necessarily benefit the local communities that are actually using their resources. And that's why I said my slide about the equitable returns on investment on the resources utilized, which going back to strategic management marketing. Because what we'll need to start looking in a part of the strategic management planning process is how can we get tourism to support the community rather than the community to support tourism.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm not sure whether, how are we for time? Wendy, there is one question I think we should all take. It's for both of you, then I will close, yeah? So this is the last question. Perhaps you can start with you again, sorry, Dimitrios. The question is, since so many webinars and online seminars are choosing to discuss the post-COVID tourism activity, perhaps it would be the ideal moment now to steer away from the business as usual scenario here and reflect on the following questions. What type of tourism would stakeholders like to see in the post-COVID period? And can we take the opportunity of managing tourism now to avoid the damage caused by unsustainable tourism and over-tourism? I'm sure you've covered some of these points made here. So very quickly to you, Dimitrios, and then just a few moments for you, Wendy, and then we'll close this webinar.
I think we covered the non-concept of over-tourism. Yeah. And I think we've covered the issue of sustainability just before. I think we'll find conflicting trends. Yeah. And I think the situation of COVID and the post-COVID is giving us a huge challenge, because a lot of the stakeholders will try to bring back as many customers as much money as possible. Airlines really want to fly again. Hotels really want to attract people. I'm really concerned that the fact that they're going to reduce prices, at least on the short term, which will be catastrophic, because they'll actually gain less benefits to bring people coming back. I think we're trying to do too many things at the same time. And I think we really need to look at it in a strategic way. And to look at it in a strategic way, we are currently on the war phase. On the war phase, we really need to take cover. The bombs are coming down our head, the millimeters or whatever it is, little invisible bombs. And currently we need to stay at home, take cover, support the people who are fighting on the war with solidarity, providing support to them in anything that they can do to actually save lives. There are 120,000 people, if I remember well, that they've lost their life. There are 1.5 million people who are infected. And in actual fact, we're going to lose a lot of life because it's a matter of statistics. If you look at the statistics, you'll understand we'll lose a lot of life more in the next month or so. So we are at the stage of war, and we need to support the war. And it's really, there was a film some years ago that says, "Where were you at war, Daddy?" You know, what did you actually do in this war? And I've sent to a lot of people because they're asking me, why are you doing all this webinars to everybody? I said, if I was a medical doctor, I would be in the local hospital doing 20-hour shifts. I'm a strategist in tourism and hospitality, and that's why I'm putting all my effort in supporting my global community. It's not a local community, on how we can recover, how we can learn. So at this stage, we've got war. We need to take protection, and we need to support those people who are on the first line, who are fighting. The second stage is we need to bring some kind of normality back, and we need to bring resources back to those people who need it more. And those people who need it more are those people at the destinations that are absolutely desperate to welcome people and welcome expenditure and welcome resources to survive. And then we start looking this on the longer term and understand what strategic actions we need to go and where do we need to take our proposition and where do we want to go longer term. And I think we really need to almost see those things in silos, because a lot of people are talking about a lot of things at the same time. And I think right now, the most important thing is, what can you do in your community to support solidarity? Go and give blood, go and volunteer somewhere, help your neighbor, do something small, be kind at this situation. And then we go to the next stage, and we'll go to the next stage.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because humanity in all that is lost, isn't it? Because everyone is thinking about the businesses, a lost business. May I ask Wendy just to say a few words of this before I close the webinar?
Yes, on this question, I agree with Demetrius that we need to put things in perspective. I think the first thing that we need to do is to contain the virus. I don't think that tourism businesses or other types of businesses, non-essential businesses, should be reopening. I think we need to give our governments time to bring this under control, and we need to play our part, because if we don't do that, we won't have any tourism. We won't have any tourists because they'll be all dead. So I think priorities are let the governments take charge and do what they need to do to contain the virus, give them the time to put the measures in place. And I think as good citizens, we need to listen and we need to play our part. If we need to stay home for now, it will be worth it staying home, because if we stay home now, we will be able to leave home later on. If we've got a tourism business, then that would mean that we would have tourists who would be alive to come to our business. From a Caribbean perspective, a lot is going to really depend on how well major markets in the USA and Europe manage the coronavirus and how they manage to contain it and eliminate it from their environments. Because if we're to reopen our destinations, we need to be certain that even if we are ready and we don't have any cases at our destinations, that the people coming in are not bringing it with them. And it concerns me a little bit to hear about the US talking about reopening immediately. The UK, we're still not even probably even reached the peak yet of our infections. So I think it's very important for these countries to do what is right, save lives first, and then we worry about our businesses and the economy later. Because to save lives now and to stay home for another 3 or 4 weeks would actually mean that we'll have a world to come back to, and we will be able then to see some sort of gradual normality coming back to our lives and to our businesses.
Well, thank you very much. The feedback keeps coming again. Fantastic. Everyone is very happy with your replies. Thank you so much. Before closing, I would like to thank you all, of course, for joining us today at this second webinar. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as you all have here. The third webinar will take place next Friday at the same time. No, it's not going to be at the same time. There will be some change there, I believe. So we'll send you our details shortly. And thank you very much, Wendy Silly. And thank you very much, Professor Dimitrios Bouhalis, for your engaging contributions to the discussion. It's been a fantastic, really excellent webinar. It has only been possible, of course, to organize these webinars because of the tremendous efforts of several people working behind the scenes. Special thanks go to them. Thank you all once again for joining us, and goodbye for now. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Stay safe, everybody. Take care. Have fun. Thank you, Eugenia. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
And thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.